I know we welcome now Joe McCabe. He's president and CEO of AutoForecast Solutions. Hey, Joe, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us what you got going on today. You've got an event, Automotive Insider, right? That's going to be held at the Butler Snow facility. What's that all about?
Yeah, that's correct. So our company, we forecast every vehicle built worldwide for the next decade, who builds it, where, when, how many. It's our job to keep you sort of abreast of what's going on in the industry. And they're coming in, and we're going to talk about what the real story is in the auto industry from, today all the way forward. Tariff issues, China, yeah, electrification, you name it, across the board.
So your organization examines and processes all of those various inputs. I mean, there are a ton of them because it's a huge industry, and of course, it's a global industry, and it's unique in that there are a whole bunch of components in a vehicle, and so there's lots of integration and lots of relationships and lots of relationships and reliance on suppliers, right, of all these elements and components that are part of the final assembly process of the actual manufacturer. You got geopolitical events, tariffs, fiscal policy, taxes, financing, interest rates, all the above figure into this industry. I'm sure I left something out, but is that what you guys do, is try to process all that and forecast where it's going?
Yeah, Gerard, that's the short list. We it's a
Exactly.
7 day it's a 7 day week job, especially now. I mean, we were watching every single day for changes. This is a very fast paced news cycle when it comes to what's going on in the industry. The problem is automotive is a glacial speed market. I mean, suppliers, like you called out, they're bidding on vehicles that won't be built for 3 years from today. Yet we're embedded in this really volatile process of tariffs in China and EVs that never took off. We never drank the EV Kool-Aid. We said, look, electrification is one arrow in the quiver of your portfolio, right? It's got to be a solution, not the only solution. And when governments and environmentalists drive an agenda that is polar opposite from consumers, that's very difficult because, like you said, you have to align hundreds, if not thousands, of suppliers to build a car. And if you're constantly changing the goalpost and saying, wait a second, we're not going to build 100,000, we're going to build 50,000, and people put millions of dollars into planning their production capacity, uh, it's a big problem out there. And you see a lot of
Yeah.
suppliers that will just go out of business because they can't properly plan. Our job is to give them, get rid of the noise and say, look, here's what's going on. You got to stay the path. You got to really focus on what your business is and how you can make money at it. And that's hopefully we're going to guide people on today.
What brings you to Mississippi specifically, Joe?
Yeah, so we were invited here by MAMA, the Mississippi Automotive Manufacturers Association, to come in and really speak this to the audience about how this is going to impact Mississippi, but not only Mississippi, but the Southeast and the whole country and the world. You got the issues with Mexico, you got the issues with the threat of the Chinese coming in and potentially cannibalizing some North American consumers. You got massive tariff issues going on. I mean, you got plants here with Toyota and Nissan that are highly exposed because of their Japanese-based company, that there's a significant amount of product that are coming across borders to satisfy that build. And they got to
Yeah.
look and say, how is this going to help me not lose money and also make money the same day when I have to plan around all this, potential uncertainty?
And we've got significant automotive manufacturing facilities to our east in Alabama as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the big pocket in the last 10 years, the Southeast has really burgeoned in terms of a great space. And a lot of it because it's a great labor pool in the Southeast.
Yeah.
And they really want to tap into the workers and the community. And once you have a vehicle manufacturer set up a shop, the suppliers all follow because they follow this just-in-time process, saying, look, I make a seat, I'm going to be an hour away from this facility because, hey, you, GM or Ford or Volkswagen, whatever, don't want to keep the inventory. We got to get to you in time. But during that whole process of this insanity of people saying, hey, we want to build 17 different vehicles and half going to be electric vehicles. Yeah, but no one's really buying them. And how do you really satisfy all of these audiences out here? We have a new government in place that's saying, look, we're going to dial that back. We want to look at manufacturers should be able to build what a consumer wants. we're not turning a blind eye to the environment. We're not going to walk away and put smokestacks everywhere and fire coal up in every state again. But you got to look at this idea where these are publicly traded companies and they have to satisfy shareholder value. A consumer is a means to an end. And when we get there, we have to say, how are we going to get there in a logical manner?
Well, as a former entrepreneur, I came to the conclusion a few decades ago it's faith, confidence, and certainty. That's what
Hmm.
drives business decision making and underpins business decision making. It's what drives investment, risk taking, employment, expansion, or the lack thereof. And when you've got such a volatile scenario that appears as what we have today, are we seeing perhaps some just freezing of plans as a result of that?
Oh, yeah. Uncertainty means stop all presses, right? I have to put in millions of dollars investment into capacity and new tooling and a future product. But if I don't know what that's going to be, because I'm going to be impacted by political agendas, I'm going to be impacted by environmentalist agendas, it basically makes me put a screeching halt to that. And when you put a screeching halt to that, innovation stops. So right now we're in that limbo phase of, we have threats of tariffs. What is a threat of tariff really? They're not gone, they're just being delayed.
Right,
So if we
right,
tariff, it's going to go on Mexico. We have a significant parts coming up, or Canada and all that. What does that mean? Well, got to build in the U.S., but you can't do it tomorrow.
right.
These are
I heard the
very
president.
big pieces.
Yeah, I heard the president talk about this morning. He was asked at a press conference. Actually, it was yesterday about future tariffs planned, like in the short term, as you know, which would include the automobile manufacturing industry as well. And he said, "Do you have a number?" The question was, "Do you have a number in mind?" He said, "Well, 25% or higher." And he said, of
Hmm.
course, and I think his goal, he made this point in answering that question, we want to recruit those companies to build their vehicles or even probably more importantly, the components that they supply to the manufacturing process in this country, thus avoiding tariffs.
Yeah, I mean, globalization it has a positive and a negative effect. Allows us to use certain countries for low cost labor, low cost products, but that sort of catches us in the act where we're saying, yeah, but we want to bring everything to the United States. We can't have both. So you
Yeah.
need a very healthy balance. But this is we're not playing Sim City here. I mean, this is big pieces. This is manufacturing facilities we've got to put in. This is labor. This is getting some materials and supply chains aligned. There is a ton of moving parts. The long game being, hey, more U.S. build. What Trump's doing is USMCA is out there. It's up for 2026 negotiation again. And he wants to basically say, okay, that was NAFTA 2.0. I want to make NAFTA 3.0. And I'm going to make it much more favorable to the US. And before I do that, though, I'm going to handcuff everyone that's not saying US first. So we're going to have some pain in the short term, but there is a long-term agenda actually bringing manufacturing back to the United States.
Yeah. And I think it would be likely much more sophisticated and more technologically advanced, Joe, and likely require fewer humans to be part of the manufacturing process.
That's a healthy balance, right? Because you have unions saying that's great, bring the
Yeah.
jobs, and then you say, but robots are going to do it. They're going to say, well, where's everyone's got to win in this, and not everyone can win. So you're right. These are one of 17 different questions that are still hanging out there in the ether about how we're going to get this done. But the idea of bringing stuff back and less reliance on foreign, we saw in COVID, we saw it during chips. Hey, Taiwan held all the chips. China holds all the minerals, right? We basically create a problem for ourselves. And now we have to dial that back and say, maybe it's not a 180 we got to do, but there's got to be something we got to change because at this current pace, we are really hurting the competitiveness of the US and the North American market.
Yeah, and Joe, I believe this goes back to perhaps the 60s, 70s, and to a great deal the 80s when, a lot of the high-profile consulting firms were advising all these big companies, pharmaceutical companies, automobile manufacturers. You could outsource this stuff and embrace globalization, as you put it, right? And drive costs down and increase profitability.
Yeah, and it's not just that. It's also Wall Street. Wall Street rewards all these new players that come in that have no product. Rivian came on the market. They were worth
Yeah.
10 times GM. on day one with no product
with
because
nothing.
everyone
And
thinks here's the next Tesla, right?
Yeah, that's really good. So we appreciate you coming on. I know you guys will have a good meeting as you provide some insight and advise the manufacturing community, the automobile manufacturing community in the state of Mississippi. Appreciate you being here, Joe, and thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you, Gerard. Anytime.
You bet. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.